I have been asked to introduce the next session. I don't think anyone's in the room, but I might as well just keep going because I've only got 7 minutes. I'm going to talk about the implications of population aging in Asia. And I just want to say that I come to this part of the world frequently, and I very much enjoy talking to a responsive audience. Part of what I do is to advise government. I advise the UK government. I also advise the Singapore government and the Prime Minister's office out of Minister Lim, and I advise the Malaysian government. But I'm going to very, very quickly take you through the implications of population aging in Asia. So I'm talking about aging, and I'm going to start with this, which is about total fertility rate, because, of course, aging is all about reduction in childbearing. What we are seeing is a reduction in the number of children that are being born, and that is causing this age structural change. If you look at this map over here, you can see that if you look at the blue and the yellow, these are countries where women are at, near, or below replacement level. And indeed, you can see it is only in sub-Saharan Africa that we still have high levels of childbearing. And if we move on quickly and look at the total fertility rate in Asia, you can see that in actual fact, it is only Bangladesh and Afghanistan in this region that still have high levels. One of the things I think we need to look at when we look at the childbearing rate in selected countries is really important going forward. So the red line is Japan. We're looking at 1950 to 2050, consistently low childbearing. But look at what has happened. We've got the pale blue line, which is China. We have the Korean line, which is purple. And we have the green line, which is Singapore. Remember that China had a one-child policy. Singapore had a two-child policy, but Korea didn't. And the really important message is if you improve education and health and well-being for women, they will reduce their childbearing. And one really important message that I want to give, and remember, we have a climate demonstration across the world. Some countries, including this country and other Asian countries, and indeed European countries, are suggesting we need to raise our childbearing. And what I want to say to you is that it is good for women, it is good for communities, and it is good for the whole world to have a lower population. And so I want to try, over the next couple of minutes, to show how actually an aging population does not necessarily lead to economic decline. But of course, we also have increasing life expectancy. And again, I've just taken some selected countries. And you will see that we have Japan, Korea, and Singapore right at the top in terms of female life expectancy. Women consistently live longer than men. Malaysia, which is yellow, is much lower. But if we compare this with healthy life expectancy, because I haven't got time really to explain it, what I want to say is that actually healthy life expectancy for women is much, much lower than life expectancy. So women will live probably until their late 80s in this part, in this country, but in actual fact, they will only be in health at the beginning of their 80s. As a consequence, I'm going to go quickly through two impacts, economic impacts of healthcare costs. The ill health of the population is going to change as we age, lower acute and infectious diseases, so less spending, but far higher chronic comorbidities. We can decide to spend money on that. And the really other important thing is the ill health of the population will change in quantity, but even with a reduction in age-specific prevalence, the quantity of ill health is going to increase. That's really, really important. Many of you will have heard that the prevalence of dementia by age is actually going down because of things like drugs, well-being, lifestyle, education. But the sheer numbers we're going to have of older adults means these diseases are going to go up. But this is really what I wanted to focus on, age structure change and productivity. There is a myth out there that the aging of a population will inevitably lead to economic downturn. China's very, very worried about it at the moment. Okay, aging changes the stock of physical capital within your population. But as David Bloom from Harvard has consistently pointed out, we have a second demographic dividend with our older population. Particularly in a high-income or well-developed country, we know that older adults release money out into the economy in terms of consumption, and that can really boost a country's economy. This is what I'm going to focus the last 4 minutes on. Aging changes the stock of human capital. People are really concerned that an older workforce is not a productive workforce. There are a variety of myths out there. So number one is education. Everyone thinks older people are less educated. I have to thank my colleague Shomik for this particular slide. So what we've got here is tertiary education in Singapore, and we have taken the birth cohorts and we are running them cross-sectionally by age. And indeed, if you look at the red line, which is looking at a cross-sectional analysis, one would think that your population is getting less educated. If, however, you look at the green line, which is a cohort analysis, it is very clear, in fact, that cohort on cohort is getting more educated. Aging promotes a shift to modern forms of intelligence. And I think this is really important. I've just come back from Canberra, where we had a big discussion in a Treasury meeting about this. And I'll very quickly talk you through this. It's really important that people understand this. We do not live in the 20th century. We live in the 21st century. And the whole technological underpinning of our economies have changed tremendously. As we age, so our intelligence changes. When we are young, we have something called fluid intelligence. It's that very, very quick, being able to very quickly deal with data. But what else deals with data in the modern world? Technology. We do not need people to deal with data in that way. As we get older, so we lose our fluid intelligence, yes, but we increase our crystallized intelligence. Lateral thinking, experience, creativity. And we know that peaks 40 to 50. And what is it that machines can't do at the moment? That's exactly, even with the best AI in the world, they cannot do the kind of creative thinking that humans do. So in fact, an aging workforce that is educated and keeps up its skills is exactly what we need as we transition across the 21st century into a higher technological world. Some people have argued that aging interacts with technological change, and there is this particular view that some countries are taking on technology to compensate for their aging population. But it's more complex than that. Very, very quickly, 2 slides to show this. This is workforce aging and the use of robots. And on one side, you have got the taking over by robots, and that's in the y-axis. And in the x-axis, you've got the change in your aging population. And yes, you can say, if we look on this side, Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, huge uptake of technology and robots in your economy. But we also have a whole load of other societies that are also aging, that are not taking on technology. And I think the argument is that actually technological change is occurring, and it's actually very good for an aging population. But I don't think one should argue, as some people have done, that this is causal. Indeed, it's something to do with the structure of your economy, and I think this is demonstrated very well here. This is the share of employment subject to potential automation. And again, we have percentage on the y-axis, and we have ages on the x-axis. And you can see, look at all those young people's jobs. Very, very vulnerable to automation. Then it ditches, and there is a slight increase towards the older age groups. But really importantly, it is not age, but it is the country's economy that is actually defining this graph. Right at the top, we have China. Huge automation across the life course, compared with Australia, that, yes, is losing its young, data-driven jobs, but actually flattening out at the bottom. So aging and technology are related, but they're not causal. So to conclude, older workers are actually more experienced. They have longer lives, so in a modern economy, there is more investment in their human capital. They are more successful entrepreneurs and innovators in an increasing number of studies because they have access to capital, to networks and experience. And repeatedly, whether we look at something like the car industry or whether we look at a modern SME with high-tech technology, an age-mixed workforce boosts productivity. So to conclude, there are complex interactions with education, capacity, skills, and technology across the life course, and really importantly, between birth cohorts. Yesterday's old people are not tomorrow's old people, and I think we have to argue very strongly that 21st century productivity curves are not as simple, it is a complex relationship with age. Thank you.